just below the screen. So during the presentation, I'll be looking at my iPad. Now, I've been told I need to come up with new jokes, so I will not be looking at kitten videos on YouTube. I will actually be looking at questions. But I'll have to get you people just slide along a little bit further because you can see that camera there, and we can get intimate.
Should we bring them closer, John?
Robert, don't touch people like that. Not that sort of intimate. But you can come in a little bit. Just we have to keep away from the cameras. And we often have stragglers, so people might come in a little bit late. But I'd like to introduce you to the team that are doing most of the talking. I'm going to ask some questions later. We've got Anthony Ferraro from JLL. We've got a global property expert from JLL. We've got Edgar from Point Architects. And we've got the developer, Simon. So, Simon, I think you're just available for questions at the end.
That's correct.
But firstly, I'd like to invite Annabelle, ladies first.
Thank you.
And also the most experienced person first. It's a little bit of a different Investorist Live. Normally, we just talk about a project. However, JLL is lucky enough to have Annabelle, who is a global property expert. She's worked as a property valuer in London. She's worked as a property valuer in New York. So I think she's been following the Investorist team around with your career, but maybe a little bit earlier than us. But she has a depth of experience globally, and she's able to provide a very unique perspective on what is going on in the Australian property landscape. Look at it from a global perspective, but also look at the trends here. There's a lot of talk in the market at the moment, and there's a bit of negative sentiment, which, as a person that's just come back from New York themselves and seeing apartments selling there at $60,000 a square metre, as opposed to $8,000 a square metre for this development, you sort of think, wow, we kind of haven't hit anywhere near the peak in this market. But Annabelle can talk you through that and talk you through some of her learnings. She's also a lecturer at RMIT, so please no spitballing. We treat our lecturers a little bit nicer at universities than we did at school. Annabelle, please.
Thank you, John. Okay, so...
and maybe we'll get everyone to sit down so you're more comfortable.
I'll swap with you.
I'll also be the person standing up, which makes me look slimmer.
All right. Now, I look after research for JLL in Victoria. I cover all the property sectors, and we obviously look at a lot of the macroeconomic stuff to do with the Victorian market and in context with the rest of Australia. So I'm going to start by just really giving you a macroeconomic overview of why, when we read all the press about the Australian property market, it's important to understand the differences between the states. Victoria and New South Wales are going gangbusters. The other states are still struggling with the end of the effects of the mining boom. So that's a really important distinction to understand. If you look at this chart behind me, Victoria's state final demand over the last year was at 4%. That's a really strong growth rate. New South Wales was 3.7. WA and Queensland over the same time period were in negative territory. Now, on the other benefit of the Victorian economy, which the other states don't have to the same extent, is diversity. On the right there, I'm going to have to stand up, I think. Can't sit down. On the right there, we've got 7 sectors that are really growing in Victoria. 49% of Victoria's gross state product is concentrated in those 7 sectors. So we're the most diverse state, and that's good for protecting from economic shocks. Even the red line is manufacturing. We talk about that in decline in Victoria. I mean, it's a decline around the world, actually, as we know, because of those disruptive technologies. But here it has declined, but it's more, the story is about what has taken over in its place. We've become a service sector economy. So thinking about that, those are the 7 sectors. Thinking about that, look at this chart. This is jobs numbers. And you can see that 2-speed economy playing out in the jobs numbers. We've got Victoria with 108,000 jobs created over the last year. New South Wales is less than that, but the other states are not performing relatively at all. The top part of that chart, the top part is actually job vacancies. So that's jobs that are still going to be filled, in theory. It's confidence in the economy that people want to advertise for new jobs. In fact, some new data came out today, I think, so that chart can be refreshed, and it confirmed, Victoria, again, 108,000 jobs over the last year to October. So it's a really positive story in terms of retail and residential markets. It's all the more amazing because we have the strongest population growth of all the states. We had 114,000 people arrive in Victoria, or not arrive, population increase last year. 55% of that roughly is immigration. There's a little blue bit on the top of this chart on the right. That's interstate migration. Victoria used to lose people to the mining states, and we don't lose them anymore. We gain them. We gain more people to this state than any other state. So that's a positive story. And the thing that really matters is that understanding that immigration quotient, because that's key to our population growth going forward. If you look at all the forecasts, we are expected to get over 100,000 people per year for the next decade. In 2030, Greater Melbourne is going to be greater than Greater Sydney. It'll be the biggest city in Australia. That's the ABS got it right. Look, we've just had the census. They'll have to remodel their figures, and we'll have to see where we're at. But it's the sentiment about it that's interesting. Short-term visitors. We're going through this incredible momentum at the moment in Melbourne. Short-term visitors by state. We've actually got. We overtook Queensland as a destination for short-term visitors in 2014. The gap between New South Wales and Victoria is narrowing. Obviously, New South Wales gets the lion's share of visitors. They've got the harbour, they've got the Opera House, that kind of thing, all those sort of things. But that spread between the number of visitors is actually narrowing. You can see there on the right, conscious decision by our governments to focus on events, activities that attract migration. There's another part to it too, though. I'll go back to another part of it, because it comes up later. This is research on this chart done by a research group we have in London called the Global Cities Research Group. And what they do is they track 200 cities around the world and create something called the Investment Intensity Indices. And what they do is they look at capital flows into real estate, all asset classes around the world, and then instead of saying, okay, in absolute volumes, London, New York, Singapore get the lion's share of all the money going to real estate, they say, let's measure it in terms of size of city. And what's interesting over the last couple of years, Melbourne has gone from 38th to 18th in the world over 2 years. Sydney is always at the top. People love investing in Sydney. Auckland's had the same trajectory as us. That's been the same sort of story. And transparency of real estate markets is a really important driver of that. At the same time, Taipei, Singapore and Hong Kong have been less, there's been an intra-regional shift of capital going on. And it's across all the real estate markets. Anyway, that's just showing how the investor market is so positive about Melbourne. So the next thing we want to know is, jump one, is why. Melbourne's been ranked, and we all heard this, Melbourne's the most livable city in the world for the 6th consecutive year. There are actually quite a few of these indices, and it always comes up high. But I thought what I'd focus on is the 5 key measures they look at. They have about 30 categories in this index, but there are 5 things they really look at. And healthcare, I'll talk about a little bit. We've got the new Peter Mac Cancer Centre opened up last year. There's going to be a new hospital in Clayton next year. There's a lot of investment in the health sector. I've had children in 3 different countries. I know it's pretty good here.
Wow.
I do, yeah. We're really lucky. We're really, really lucky here. Environment. You look at the views outside. and you can see that the environment is lovely here. We have great, great climate. But the ones I want to focus on are infrastructure and education. Infrastructure is about maintaining that livability. If we've got population growth trucking along at 100,000 people a year, you're very quickly going to end up not being able to move. So what we have here, and this is the impressive thing, is the number of projects that are about to come on stream, or rather the regional rail link was completed last year. That sorts out all the rail stuff to the west of the CBD. The Western Distributor, that's a road project. That is basically widening roads, creating a better access to the port, and the most important part of that one is another river crossing to get into the CBD from the west. For this particular project, probably the 50 level crossings will make a difference, because it's all about improving the rail links in the southeast suburbs. So what's happening there is you're going to take road and rail where you have boom gates, get rid of the boom gates, allows way more trains. So it's a really good thing for the market there. And the last one is the really big one, which is Metro Rail. That won't start until 2018. And it'll take 10 years to build, but it'll be fantastic for the livability generally of the city.
Annabelle, just a quick question in relation to
yes.
infrastructure and transportation. How much value does that add to property, particularly in those outer regions where the majority of people are generally working in the CBD and commuting in and out on a daily basis?
Well, I'm glad you've stopped me, actually, because you're right. That's exactly what it's all about. The livability indices talk about how much time it takes to get to work.
Yeah.
So if you're in the suburbs and you can have more and more trains, faster trains, they don't have to stop or slow, then it just makes the whole thing move so much better. So it's important infrastructure. The other thing this chart shows is Victoria is very well placed to pay for all this. This is looking at public sector debt per capita. And the rather depressing thing is that even though Queensland and WA had a mining boom, they are heavily borrowed. And in fact, this chart doesn't even include the sale of the Port of Melbourne. So Victoria is actually in a slightly better position than even this chart shows, because their policy is sell some major infrastructure and then you can sort of start building more. It keeps the whole thing moving. And
would it be fair to say the infrastructure implementation is because of what's happening with the economy and what's happening with population growth?
Absolutely, absolutely. It feeds on itself. It absolutely feeds on itself, and it means that the government's very well placed for paying for some of this infrastructure. Right, now this one, Anthony, you wanted me to cut this up, this one, but I actually like it. It's really showing one of the other big draw cards and the reason we're so livable here is this tertiary education sector. It leads in Australia. We have Melbourne University is categorised as number 1 in Australia. Monash is number 5 in Australia. They're both, I think Melbourne's top 33 in the world, Annabelle? Yes. Monash is, I don't know.
48.
48. Well, no, it's top 100 anyway.
Yeah.
So you had this incredible draw card of the education sector. And you can see that the top right there, 29% of Chinese commencements in Australia are in Victoria. So that feeds on that immigration population growth.
Just on that, Annabelle, of the students that are coming here for education, are they coming here for a better life? Are they coming here to reside? Are they coming here for employment in the area? Or are they flying back and creating new lives overseas?
I think there's a bit of a mix, but there's certainly a big number who are coming to study.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I reckon the tourism numbers are going up. They've got all their friends and family, they come and visit. And then a number will stay. They will absolutely stay.
And the one thing as well with the Chinese middle class, what we don't understand and we're just only scratching the surface of, is the child-only policy, which has recently just changed. But there's 6 forms of income for that one child. then they'll marry, and then there's 12 forms of income. And then unfortunately, you know, well, birth and death is part of life, and some of those grandparents will perish. So therefore, the net asset growth and the net wealth of those families will subsequently increase. So therefore, their spending habits and investment in property is quite large. So therefore, not today, not tomorrow, by 2030, by 2040, we'll see net wealth of these middle class become high-end income earners, which will stimulate the economy. And we often joke, but I see this as the next gold rush. And particularly now, between today and 2035, we will see a strong impetus of these educated, self-sustained individuals coming and residing, starting new lives, and also creating families. So therefore reinvesting in the local areas.
Yeah, it's true. And the other big thing about the university sector is its ability to create innovation and a situation which businesses can really tap into. So going back to those employment numbers, it's really good when you've got a strong education sector. Now this is a bit of a busy slide, and I wanted to just talk about the Monash precinct, which is very close to your project.
Not far at all.
It's
13 minutes?
13 minutes by car. It's a really strong university. But on the right there, I've listed the office sector tenancy profile in that precinct. It's known as the Monash Employment Cluster. You've got a whole bunch of Fortune 500 companies, ASX listed companies that are all centering themselves around Monash. And it's because they've got these relationships. They've got, Johnson & Johnson have got sort of research relationships with the university. They're big employers in that area that are centred around the university. And it happens around Melbourne University as well, but all the universities, a strong education sector is good for jobs.
And they need somewhere to live. They don't want to commute too far from and to work. They want the lifestyle. They want the accessibility. And also, these companies aren't getting smaller over time. They're expanding, they're reinvesting in resources, and they're growing. And what we're really excited, and why JLL decided to take on East End in Blackburn South, we're no longer pioneering. We're right in what's known as a key employment hub. So therefore, long-term stimulus in the area will continue to expand.
This is another slide to do with innovation. If you think about the ASX 200, big businesses, okay? 29% of those are based in Victoria. But what's a more interesting fact, I think, is that if you look at the ones that have floated since 2014, 44% of those are based in Victoria, and that's more than in Sydney. And so 11 out of the 23 companies that have floated since 2014 have managed to grow. The ingredients to grow are here in Victoria. Now, onto apartments. We've talked a lot about economics. Let's talk about apartments. This is the supply pipeline. It's broken up into different bits, this chart. The hashed red is planning approved and plans submitted. Plans submitted is the top one. Plans approved is the stripy one. This is a lot of what is quoted in the market about supply. So I want to just, it's all about understanding supply and demand. If you think about that future supply and take away the ones that are proposed and those that are plans submitted, some of those will go ahead and some of those won't. It's the great unknown with the Victorian market. But it's possible that they won't go ahead in this current cycle.
Can we just touch on very quickly, the new town planning laws are coming into place, proposed December 24th. So a lot of these that are proposed developments that may not comply with the new town planning legislation will have a huge impact not only on feasibilities for developers, so therefore when they go through the process, what they thought they could get to what they will actually get from a feasibility perspective will be much lower yield. So therefore, them physically doing the development is far less. And what we're seeing is product that has approval now and has missed that timeline will certainly go ahead, but we're certainly not up to speed to A, population growth, and B, construction growth. And the one thing people don't understand, we had 21,000 apartments constructed. Over 80% of those have already been sold. So therefore, there's no opportunity for a second-tier audience to come into that market. So we really encourage our buyers to act quickly because the opportunity is simply not there.
Now, this chart, and this is just to really discuss research, for JLL's research into the apartment market. We actually cover, units, projects over 50 units, and this is the area we cover. So a lot of this supply we're talking about is happening in these areas. This is what's under construction. This is all those plans approved, plans applied, and I think really what I want to point out is that a lot of that supply side risk is based in the North Melbourne precincts and the CBD. So it's just something to think about when you're reading in the paper about supply.
Do you think the new rail link from Ballarat going to Brunswick and North Melbourne, then linking up to the City Loop for the first time ever, will have a big impact?
Absolutely. I mean, it'll take a while, but amazingly enough, they're doing it without disrupting many of the station sites. It's going to be an impressive project, absolutely, and make things far more connected. And then when we're trying to understand the supply-demand balance, we often look at rental vacancy rate. And this is the interesting thing. Melbourne has an average vacancy rate of 3%. And even now, with this talk of this supply, demand is meeting it. And this is inner city, so it's not talking about outer suburbs. And you can see that we really haven't moved away from that, and we're actually below that at the moment. This is another chart that's worth looking at. If you look at the red line, you can see that steadily Greater Melbourne's unit prices have been rising. If you look on the right, Sydney has also been rising, but at a bit more of a clip, a bit more of an accelerated rate. It's indexed, so it's not absolute numbers. But the effect of the dollar, or the exchange rate, is actually created a situation where for the last 5 years, you've actually got Melbourne's apartments are now a bargain for those buying in, Chinese currency or Singaporean currency. It says there, a 12% difference. So just think about that in terms of that demand.
I think we have a question.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
fire away.
In the research, did you put in the currency fluctuation into the factor?
No, it's
Not yet.
not yet, no.
So what we do know, if you bought in 2012 where the Aussie dollar was between $1.08 and $1.12, and the average price per apartment was $465,000. The average price per apartment now is about $515,000, $520,000, and the Aussie dollar is fluctuating between 72 and 74 cents. So it's actually, the price has gone up, but for foreigners it's actually cheaper for them to enter the market point. So
Things fluctuate. It's a crude measure,
Correct.
but it's a, yeah.
Now the trend of the Chinese yen is also
dropping.
steady as well.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
And the other thing as well, what we're noticing is impact on inflation that's happening on the Aussie dollar, and hence why the RBA probably held, where a lot of people thought they'd probably drop again, but they didn't, and it'd be interesting to see what happens post-Donald Trump and what happens to the Aussie dollar down the track.
It's pretty hard to...
I didn't expect that we could get through one presentation without some pressure. So that's good. Thank you, Anthony.
No, that's okay. But the other thing as well, what we must understand, we're now in a global economy. Previously, when you were buying homes in the 70s, 80s and 90s, you were competing against your neighbour or Mr. and Mrs. Smith around the corner. Now you're competing with the Hong Kongese, the Indonesians, the Singaporeans and the Malaysians. And, on the weekend, Hong Kong introduced a 15% stamp duty on top of the luxury tax for owner-occupiers out of Hong Kong. So therefore they say, okay, do I buy at 42,000 a square metre, or do we see Melbourne or Sydney, which is not far away, as really good value for money? So we're now no longer in a local economy. We are truly macro in our approach, and a global audience is certainly investing in Australia, in particularly Sydney and Melbourne.
Do you reckon that the foreign stamp duty will increase from 7 up?
I think foreign stamp duty is not the issue. The issue is banking, and the banking sector are very short-minded, and
you're
I
right
hope
about
there
that,
are
I
some
think.
bankers, and I hope there's some bankers online. What's currently happening in the market certainly gets me a little bit edgy in the belly because it's rubbish. We're seeing a very, very good, healthy economy. We're seeing very good capital growth. We're seeing very low vacancy rates. And we're seeing the lowest default rates in the world. So therefore, the banks that are saying they're trying to mitigate risk and mitigate funds of lending to self-employed Chinese is rubbish. It's simply to preserve their own position, and it's simply to slow down funds from coming in. But the Chinese are coming, and we're only scratching the surface. And what I see is we should be encouraging our foreign partners to invest, as opposed to letting them go to Canada, London, New York. Let them come to Melbourne and Sydney.
We've just had one of our people online say, "Hey, I like the questions from the audience, but I have no idea what you're asking." So when you ask a question, it's going to be a little bit weird, but one of us is going to have to basically repeat it at the
Okay.
start when you're answering, because then our people online will get the gist.
And encourage them to ask questions as well.
Well, they are. They're asking questions. Well, they're giving statements.
Oh,
Please,
good.
please repeat your question.
Please
All right.
repeat.
Okay, so this is exactly what you just highlighted there.
Yeah.
Look, the data might not be incredibly new, but it just illustrates that how low risk housing is in compared to other loans. And if you look at an international comparison of non-performing loans, Australia has really weathered all the cycles really, really well.
Yeah.
So I think that just gives a bit of comfort in how the market works.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is a chart that, look, it's very hard getting data out of China that's reliable. This is...
We argued about this one for a
We
few minutes,
did,
didn't we, Annabelle?
The Chinese are checking
So I don't know how accurate it is, but it is what they've produced in terms of what they categorise as middle income, high net worth and low income. It's based on a $70,000 household income that puts up to high net worth. And it's based on 2012 figures, okay? So what I want to highlight is the red area. That's the middle class in China. I've always said that it's all about, they'll buy our baby powder, they'll buy our meat, our vegetables, our food. Fantastic. Until I spoke to one of our colleagues from the Shanghai office who said, I'm in the red area. You can't rule me out. I'll come and buy here. They want to come and buy here. They do want to come here. So when I originally said, well, it's the top tiny yellow bit that is in our market, has the potential to invest overseas, I think it's far bigger than just, it's far bigger.
Yeah.
Malaysia have the same demographic, same stuff, same changes.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Class are coming.
Middle
Yeah.
class are coming, exactly.
And that trend is everywhere in the world. So South Americans are buying into America at
Exactly.
unprecedented rates, and their incomes are much
No
lower
Mexicans?
than that. Sorry, Mexicans.
No Mexicans?
Yeah.
Trump question number 2. We need a whiteboard actually to mark down the.
And the critical point, what people fail to understand in the local market being in Australia, is it's freehold land. If you buy in Asia, you buy in Southeast Asia, you buy in China, it's not freehold land, it's leasehold. So therefore, for generations, for their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, they'll be able to own an asset. The other thing as well is our transparency of business. Hence is another reason why this Chinese middle class choose to come here. Our red tape is very good, we're highly regulated, and they know there's mandatory controls, whether it's from a tax perspective, a construction perspective, or registering your business. And you know you can wake up in the morning and you know your money is going to still be safely in the bank. There's not going to be a new legislation and all of a sudden they've pulled it. So it's all these peace of mind factors that resonate with this very educated audience who are very global in thinking and value for money proposition. And we see this as the gold rush. Annabelle and I had a bit of a barney about it. I said it's much greater. And she said, oh, But the transparency in China is simply not there. And why would
Yeah.
they disclose how much they're worth? Because all they're doing is exposing themselves to local politicians. Hence why they come to Australia, and hence why they come to Melbourne, which is very, very transparent and very tightly regulated.
Yeah. I mean, it also goes, I mean, the new regulations come in through with FIRB and the state
Correct.
government. It's all open. It's not, you know.
Well, if it
it's
means
all
they've got to
open.
pay 7% stamp duty, but they sleep better at night, they're happy to pay the $30,000 or $40,000 extra.
Yeah. All right, and then I've got just 2 or 3 slides on Blackburn South, okay? Just to talk about the area we're talking about.
Talk about the area, it's bloody exciting. It's an amazing
You're gonna
area.
talk about
Are
the
you
area.
serious?
I'm doing the research
If
bit.
you look at the
I'm doing
capital
the
growth, it's outstanding. How could you not be
All right.
excited about Blackburn South, Annabelle?
Greater Melbourne over the last 10 years. Apartment prices have risen 67%. Whitehorse, local government area, 102% over the last decade. And Blackburn South, 144%
Wow.
over the
Wow.
last decade. So that is the average apartment price. Obviously, the project is right in the middle of a whole bunch of LGAs. So, you know, it varies. But it's a very strong growth story in terms of its location and what's been happening there.
We'll talk about the average actual apartment price on the top there, 317,000. Sorry, Annabelle. And now Blackburn South medium unit price is 780,000. We don't have any product like that except for the townhome or the loft apartment. Everything's under 570, 560,000. So certainly an area of substantial capital growth. Buy today and allow it to flourish tomorrow. And it's certainly an area where you buy in at the bottom of the food chain, and you'll be able to reap the rewards over the next 20 years. And if you ring me in 5 or 10 years, and hopefully I'm still here to sell it, I'll hang up on you, because you'll continue to make money and you'll continue to get good, very, very strong rental returns.
So one of the reasons that Blackburn South is it's a family community. Communities that are family communities are always stable, always reliable, and families are attracted to the good medical facilities we've spoken about, good schools, Monash University, etc. So, and this is my final slide because it kind of sets the piece of where everything is. It's Monash University, 13 minutes drive away from the site. You've got Glen Waverley College and Box Hill High, both top 10 public schools in Victoria. Out of the 272 schools in Victoria, those 2 are in the top 10. Not too far from the CBD. I'll leave it to you, Andy, to explain properly the site, because you do this kind of thing. But yeah, it's got great universities nearby.
The critical thing is Box Hill, literally a stone throw away. 2007, could buy a house there for 350, 400,000. 6 Bruce Street, Box Hill, was bought in 2012 for 465,000. Just sold in March this year for close to 4.6 million. Across the road. It's the only area within the school zone of Box Hill, and you're not paying the premium. So you're not paying $10,000 a square metre, you're paying $8,000 a square metre. You're within the school zone of Box Hill, you're in the Box Hill shopping precinct, and also the other thing you should think about, these global firms such as QBE, MYOB, Johnson & Johnson don't just set up multi-million-dollar infrastructure hubs and employ thousands of people and get thousands of interns every year because it's a nice area. It's clearly a growth area that they foresee as being the future growth corridor for Victoria. Hence why they go to these areas, they buy in cheap or they get good leases in, they lock themselves in for 50 years, and then they ride the wave. Imagine what you could do for your clients from a property perspective if you get them to buy at $1 and it's $25 tomorrow. They won't go anywhere else. So what we're seeing with this opportunity and why JLL chose to take this project on board in Blackburn South, you're not pioneering, the area is very strongly established. The education, the health and employment sectors are very stable. And during the recession, Victoria was only one of the very few states in the world that had growth. So imagine now when we're scratching the surface with the Aussie dollar sliding and population growth rising, and we simply can't build enough homes, and affordable housing is a real key issue. Blackburn South we see as a very strong precinct and an area that will have substantial growth of $10,000 a square metre within no time.
Okay. Well, that's it from me.
Annabelle, they're fantastic slides. Is it possible for us to load them onto the portal so our members can download them and use that information when they're selling to their clients?
Yeah, I'm sure we can do that. Yeah.
That'd be fantastic. Obviously, respect JLL's copyright.
Yeah, well, I will just check them first before
Yeah.
I give them to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'd be fantastic.
I'll check them first.
So by the
Absolutely,
end,
yeah.
if I say by the end of the week or early next week, we'll have those slides online so everyone can download them. I think there's some fantastic data in there.
Okay.
Now onto the project, because this is actually the smallest project that Investorist has ever done Investorist Live on. I think we were 22
Yep.
units. So I'd like to set this as a bit of a challenge. The last time we were here in JLL's office, I think we reserved 76
of
units on the
96.
night. So we have more people here tonight. So I think we should try and make this a bit of a record in terms of sell down. And I would like you to tell everyone here
Well,
what about the project makes it possible.
The critical thing we're hearing is townhomes, townhomes, townhomes. So what we've done, and I'll get the guru architect to talk about it at length, but the critical thing is we really wanted owner-occupier type stock that appealed to investors. We wanted owner-occupier stock that appealed to owner-occupiers. So from a yield perspective, price point wasn't going to be a definitive factor. Quite a good entry point, 360 odd thousand to 550,000 being the real sweet spot. So you're not paying premium. So from a yield perspective, it'll be strong. But from a livability perspective, and I'll let the architect expand further, is spacious, lots of natural light. But it's boutique. And it's very, very rare, and it's great that we've got the developer on board who's owned the site for a particular period of time that can invest in more quality in the apartment and give more space back. And what we're hearing from buyers is, yeah, I'd love a townhome, great, but do you want to pay the price? No. So therefore we're giving the space and the size of owner-occupier living without the price tag. So therefore your clients will really ride the wave of strong capital growth, will have solid tenancy if it's an investor. But the majority of people we expect to buy in this project will be owner-occupiers. Because it's 22 apartments, very few developers would proceed for 22 apartments because the yield's simply not there. Once you take out consultancy fees, construction, the cost of concrete and stainless steel isn't declining, putting in appliances is increasing. So therefore, if you care about your clients, if you want them to reinvest with you and you want to build a portfolio for your clients, these boutique luxury type projects is where you should position them within the suburbs where there's strong education, strong employment and strong healthcare. Complemented by infrastructure and roads, you really can't go wrong.
Ed, can you tell us a little bit about the design?
Yeah, I'd love to actually.
Are we able to get some of the renders of the project up on the screen? Thank you.
Okay, this site presented a lot of positives as against negatives that we do a lot in inner city apartments. When we tend to design apartments, we're always building to the extremities, always to tidal boundaries, always about overlooking, always about protecting, overshadowing the neighbours. We had a great opportunity to provide a design that actually set the design in the block, away from the boundaries. By doing that, it gave us what we call generational living. It gave us the opportunity to have ground floor apartments with their own backyards. It gave us the opportunity where if people want to buy, they've got a patch of green on the ground that allows them to plant their own, put their own landscape, put their own personality into their own apartments. We usually don't have that opportunity when we're designing apartments that are sort of really stretched out to the nth degree. So it gave us great opportunity to allow the occupier, the owner-occupier, to put their own sort of signature on each of their ground floor apartments. Again, and with generational living, it allows us the opportunity that if you do live in there, there is an opportunity to put a swing set. There is an opportunity to plant something in your backyard. And then as you go up, it's only a 3-storey building. And in time, you'll get trees and deciduous planting going through. So we're not talking about low-level landscaping that sits at a metre. We're talking about the opportunity to get great landscaping of trees that will be up to 7, 8, 9 metres. And if you're on that top level of apartment, you're up 6 metres off the ground, you'll be right amongst tree canopies. Now that is a real breathtaking view. You're not relying on borrowed views and borrowed light. You'll go out onto your balcony and you'll have a great opportunity to be amongst the trees. It's sort of like its own oasis. So we're not really borrowing off anybody else. It's very internalised and it provides great amenity for people that live there.
Is there a lift, Edgar?
There is a lift, there is. The basement all the way to top level.
Right.
And also with the balcony apartments themselves, the balcony designs are more integrated within the apartment style itself. So we talk about indoor-outdoor living and it's never referred to apartment terms. But this design actually allows us to have an open outdoor space that you go indoor to outdoor. The balconies are internalised. It gives us a great opportunity to be weather protected and a great opportunity to put an outdoor setting on your balcony and have your own little space outside. There is opportunities to put a barbecue in there. There is an opportunity to put tables and chairs in there as well. The balconies aren't externalised. It gives us great privacy and great warmth between the inside livability space and the outside as well.
What's the average size of 1s, 2s, and are there any 3s? Well, there's a townhouse, so.
There is a double-storey townhouse in there, which is a great little design. Again, that's from ground to level 1, so we do have a great outdoor component as well with that.
What's your size of the units? Where do 1 bedrooms start at? What are the
50
majority?
square metres is the smallest.
Okay.
That's plus balcony.
Yeah.
So 58 to 60 square metres would be a 1-bedroom apartment, and then they go up to 75 square metres to 2-bedroom plus the balcony as well.
Fantastic. And what are those price points, Anthony?
Oh, look, we've gone back and forth and really made sure that we looked at our competitors and what they were doing and allowed them to go to market first. So we're looking at around that 375 price bracket, with the majority of stock being $520,000 to $570,000.
I did a quick analysis before this and looked at your average price per square metre, and you're about 8.2.
Yeah.
How does that compare to the local area?
Well, you know, look across the road, Box Hill, you won't get in at less than 9.8 a square metre, $9,800. If you look at other projects in the area that are actually not in the school zone, are around the same price. So the advantage we have is we're in the school zone, we're a stone throw away from Box Hill, and you're only paying $8,200 per square metre. A lot of people talk about cost per square metre. I talk about price. What is the size and what is the price point? And the price point for the sizes at $375,000 for a car park, $515,000 for a 2-bed with a car park is extremely good value for money. And what are you going to get in the area for those price points?
So they
Not a
all
whole
include
lot.
car?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
everything includes car, the
Yep.
price includes car.
Yep.
Do they include storage cages?
Includes storage cages. We're not talking about over bonnet. There's standalone storage cages. We've got
Okay.
visitors' car spaces in the basement as well. So, like I said, it's not bursting at the seams. It
Yeah.
provides all the amenity pretty comfortably on site.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Very good. Anthony, is there more to talk about?
No, I just think a lot of people and a lot of the brokers and the financial planners talk about, what do you have boutique? What do you have boutique? Well, we have something on offer. And we'd certainly be disappointed, particularly for the pre-registrations we've had, if it wasn't sold out within 7 business days. Particularly for the demand, the location and the price point. It'd be very disappointing if we didn't sell it out within 7
There's a
business
challenge.
days.
There's a challenge. 7 business days. Look, we talked a bit about when we invited people here on
Yep.
incentives.
Yes.
I'm going to ask Simon a bit about his track record to make sure you can actually pay my members their fees. But can you, before we kick to Simon to make sure he can afford it, can you please tell, what are we paying?
Yeah,
what are
look-
the incentives? What's special about coming?
Yep.
Why should people have turned up here except for you putting on a beer?
Yeah, no, look, very good question. It's cold beer, John, and the critical thing is what we're offering is a 5% rental guarantee for 12 months, free timber floorboards, free blinds, interest on deposit, and free conveyancing. Plus a rental guarantee for only the first 10 sales. So first in, best dressed. We will see a very large uptake of owner occupiers, so therefore the rental guarantee is probably null and void, to be honest. However, we will give that to give your investors comfort and security of, what if I can't lease it out? The vacancy rate in Blackburn South is 0.6%. 0.6%. So if you had 1,000 homes or apartments, 0.6% of those are vacant, which is virtually zero. So if you care and love your clients and you want to get them in a portfolio that's going to give them good yields and good capital growth, it'd be irresponsible of you not to place them in this project, quite seriously, and shy them away from the CBD projects and South Bank projects where banks are running for the hills, not funding, and valuations are coming in short. We know this project will value and settle very, very, very strongly. And banks will actually be excited about getting involved, so much so we had 4 property management firms contact us. Can we assist with property management already? Because they know there's high demand, low supply of stock in the area, particularly being in that school zone. So we're really excited about it, and we don't often take many projects on, John, as a firm. We reject more projects than we take on, but certainly we saw a great opportunity with this project.
And a great developer. Can you tell us a little bit, Simon, about JPS?
Yes, JPS, we've been in the market for, well, I've been developing projects for about 15 years. This is the next project in a line of boutique developments that we've been doing for probably the last 5. We've completed projects in Port Melbourne and St Kilda, and recently something similar in Hyatt. We chose the area particularly for its investment potential and growth. We saw it advantaged with the school zones, the low rental yields, not yields, vacancy rates. High yields.
Very high yields.
Low vacancy rates. So yeah, look, it was a great opportunity for us to get out in Blackburn South. We saw some good opportunity out there.
Terrific. Now, I'm a little bit conscious of time, but I'd like to open up questions. And again, please remember we're going to have to repeat the question for the benefit of everyone online. I'm going to kick in with one more question. What is the largest, and a question from online, what's the largest apartment in terms of internal space? So I guess the largest 1-bedroom and the largest 2-bedroom.
The largest 1-bedroom is just a shade over 50 square metres.
Yep.
Plus balcony.
Yep.
The largest 2-bedroom apartment is 76 square metres.
Okay.
Yep.
Fantastic.
But functional. And
Yeah.
you know, they talk about sizes. There's a lot often with
Sorry,
sizes.
yeah.
There's a lot
I
of
think we've
lost
got one at
space.
about 99 metres. There is a couple of larger.
The larger
two-bedroom.
2-bed, 2-bath. But they're functional and they're square in size. So
Good to
there's
see
no
a
wasted
developer
space.
that's on to the details. That's good.
But no wasted space and effective living.
Jack?
Is it 12 is FRB approved? Or
The question is there any FRB
Yeah, there
approval?
is. Six apartments,
6 out of 20?
22.
And sorry, just one question.
Anticipated completion date?
The question is the anticipated completion date.
Son?
Obviously, depending on our campaign, it'll be toward the end of 2017, early 2018.
So if the people here can sell it out within 7 days, which is the challenge that's just been thrown down.
Well, I'll be
you're saying-
surprised
We'll
if
be
it
starting
wasn't.
before Christmas. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
That was one of my 2 questions. The other one was the car spaces. I'm assuming they're not stackers.
So the question is, are the car spaces stackers or are they normal drive-in
No,
spaces?
they're all stackers.
They're all stackers?
They are stackers.
Yes. And the
what-
critical thing
what
is
sort
that's part
of
of living
stacker?
now. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of our projects are stackers, and you know, you can thank your local councillor for that. Simply because of the ratio of car parks, we simply wouldn't get it. So therefore, the developer had no choice to give stacking as a system. Otherwise, there'd be no car parks at all.
Do any apartments have more than one car space?
I believe there's about 2 spaces that we can allocate.
The 3-bedders do have 2 car
Okay,
spaces.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Other questions? There's got to be a few more questions.
How do we reserve, John?
Oh, how do we reserve? Anthony?
Very simply, tonight what we'll do is proceed into the room to the right. We've got non-exclusive agency agreements. For those that are not physically in the room, they are found on the portal. And simply email or if you're physically here, come and see Danielle and I, and we'll reserve the stock tonight. You've got 5 business days, starting Monday, 8 a.m. to go to your clients and get us a contract of sale. 10% deposit paid within 5 days of the contract signing, and the day of the contract signing, 2,000 must go down in the vendor solicitor trust account. Bank guarantees are acceptable. Deposit bonds are not. And please to ensure that you comply with the bank guarantee checklist, so therefore we don't have to go through and double handle the process of 10% deposits. And hopefully we get them all sold, which I'm very confident we will. The demand has been outstanding, and we can enjoy the Christmas turkey together and let the developer develop and let the builders build.
Yeah, so, and if you're online, obviously, there's a big green reserve button on investorx.com and press
Yep,
it.
and we'll do it live.
And also on the JLL portal.
Correct.
Press the reserve button. Any more questions? Well, we have managed to deliver an Investorx Live pretty much on time, so that's a first. That's great. And that was really informative, Annabelle. That was wonderful. That was, I think, the most interesting Investorx Live that I've seen, because it was not all project focused, but this is a pretty exceptional project to sort of run on. So if you can thank our presenters.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And please get selling. Remember, we've got a 7-day challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Proceed to come through the room when you've got a chance.